Net gain, networking, encouragement, and training. Brought to you by Jack of All People Trades, helping snow and landscape companies recruit, train, and retain the best employees. Welcome to Net Gain. This is Networking, Encouragement, Training. I'm your host, Evan Tashwire from Jack of All People Trades. We help landscape, snow, and service business owners stop losing good employees and build win-win workplaces without all the corporate HR fluff. So Net Gain is for landscape, snow, and service business owners who are tired of hiring, training, and losing good people. Each episode tackles one real people problem and talks about what actually works in the field. So today I'm continuing my series on employee engagement. So for those who haven't heard it, I am going to review some of the basics. So for some of you who've been tuning in, some of this is going to be repeated. But for those of you who are new, it's going to set a good foundation for you to learn about employee engagement, because today we're really going to talk about employee engagement and how you can build great teams and how teams keep people engaged. So as I welcome you here, I want you to think about this. So business owners, leaders, think about what would it look like if you had 21 to 51% less employee turnover. That's almost, 2 in 10 to 1 in 2 less employees leaving, going out the door, taking that experience and institutional knowledge with them. What about 78% less absenteeism? What would that look like if for every call off you had or no show, 3 out of 4 of those disappeared and people showed up? What about 23% greater profitability? What could you do as a company if you were 23% more profitable? How could you reward your people? How could you reward yourself? How could you better reach out and engage your customers? What could you do better in operations? What tools and trades can you invest in? So these aren't just random numbers. These are actually the difference between the median top quartile or top fourth and bottom quartile or bottom fourth business units measured by Gallup's Q12 employee engagement survey over decades of research. So they have done research on research on research on this. So the too long didn't work is there's proof in the pudding this stuff works. So listen, hear what engages your team, and put it into practice. So what I suggest for putting it into practice is you've heard the expression, we don't want to boil the ocean, meaning we don't want to try to do everything at once. But I challenge you to take one thing from this podcast and say, based on what I'm hearing today, what is something I'm going to either stop, or continue doing? So start, stop, or continue doing based on what I learned. So this episode, like I said, is going to focus really all about teamwork and how building a good culture is going to help you build good teams, leading to greater employee engagement. So if this is your first time tuning in and you're wondering, what the heck is employee engagement? I thought he said no corporate HR fluff. I got you. So this is what employee engagement is. Employee engagement is the emotional commitment and connection that an employee has to their organization, their work, and their colleagues. So it's not just about whether they show up, but how they show up. So do they feel involved and responsible, or are they just going through the motions? So to paint a picture, engaged employees are people who are psychologically invested in their work. So if you think about that, those are people that go that extra mile and care and maybe do some additional research to say, hey, I was thinking about the different challenges we've been running in with landscape builds, or you talked about different ideas. I was looking up ideas. What do you think about this? That's what psychological investment looks like. Engaged employees also feel a greater sense of ownership over their contributions. So in snow and ice management, an engaged employee is going to be one that goes out and does those extra ice checks and really documents well and says, hey, I walked the property, I walked the key areas, and I made sure that we were clear. I made sure we had extra de-icer down. Here's my plan for monitoring the extra, the rest of the storm coming in or the rest of the potential weather before it warms up, because they're saying, I own that. So engaged people own things, and they're also motivated to go above and beyond the additional job requirements. So if they see someone struggling or maybe could just use a little bit of coaching on how to do something more efficiently, they're the ones that will go out of their way in the right professional manner to do that. So long story short, you want engaged employees on your team, and I'm going to talk to you about how to do that. Get a quick water break here before we jump in. So the long story short of engagement is it is an emotional internal drive, and team and company culture have a big effect on engagement. So, what in the world do employees need as a team, according to Gallup's decades of research? Number one, or what they call Q7, is at work, my opinions seem to count. So, their opinions have to count at work. Now, a lot of people misunderstand this and say, does that mean I need to do everything that my employees say? No, it does not mean that. It just means that their opinions are accounted for. So, for example, if they say, hey, we should purchase this new software, and you had just invested in a CRM system that you're under contract with, you're really liking, you can say to them, hey, look, I appreciate that suggestion. I appreciate why you brought it forward, but we're not going to be able to make that change at this time. And here's why. So when you share that why behind them, you're showing them that even though you didn't do what they suggested, their opinion was still accounted for. And that's important. So also with when you do put something in place that employees suggest, when you give employees input, you also give them ownership. So if your operations team, let's say, for example, says, hey, I see how we have these routes structured. I actually suggest we should move the structure around and go here first instead of here. Great. If you put that in place, it number one shows that you care. But then with that as a leader and an owner, you can say, hey, we're taking your suggestion, but you are accountable for making this work. So it gives them that sense of accountability and ownership and drive, which actually helps free you up as an owner. So it's like, hey, you want to do it this way? Great, let's do it, but you have to own it. So it's not you as an owner have to own everything that they suggest, but they get to own it and show greater accountability. When it does succeed, they're able to, really flourish in that. And even if it doesn't, they can still show accountability by saying, hey, you know what? Let me go back and analyze why that went wrong. And as long as they're willing to admit mistakes, analyze what went wrong, and make those changes, it can still come out as a win for you. So, for example, think about, I said about landscape routing, if they suggest a change, let them try it, but hold them accountable to the same standards. If they believe in their suggestion, they're going to want to go for it. Another thing that really helps drive team engagement is the mission and purpose of my company makes me feel that my job is important. So they need to know that their job and what they do matters to the whole of the organization. I think about the quote, I can't remember who it was. I want to say it was President Kennedy visiting NASA, but don't quote me on this. When he ran, I don't know if this is a true story or just a parable, but I think it hits either way. He ran into a custodian and he's like, oh, what do you do here? He's like, you're the custodian. He said, yeah, but I'm not just a custodian. I'm helping us put a man on the moon. So if you think about that, that was somebody who, even though they were picking up trash, cleaning bathrooms, they were thinking, hey, you know what? If this environment's clean, people are going to be more likely to want to come here. They're going to be more focused, proud of their work. I also can make sure things are clean and I'm preventing disease so that people can come to work and we don't have sickness spreading around. So I am helping support putting a man on the moon. So even if you're not in the field doing the operation, even if you're not the company owner or the person that's in front of the clients, you who is invoicing, making sure that we get money coming in to support the operation, you who are collecting, you who are providing admin support to make sure we have the structure under everything, IT, technical support, whatever it is, you're doing a big thing to really help make sure that the mission gets accomplished. So people need to feel that and see the connection to the whole. So mission and core values, one thing with this, they have to be something more that's just put on the wall or website. They have to be lived. If you put out core values, like for example, if you say you care about employees and you talk disparagingly about them, they're going to see that's BS and nobody's buying into that. Same thing if you say that, you're about new ideas and you want innovation, but you're stuck doing the same thing year after year and people see that, people sense hypocrisy and they're going to pick up on that. But if you live out your values, people will be more likely to live them with you. So if you do say that we care about employees and they do see that you're personally invested, you ask how they're doing, you check in and say, hey, how's your week going? Is there anything I can do as a leader to help move an obstacle for you or remove a bottleneck? And you do that, then they're going to see that you care and they're going to be more engaged. So you don't want to live in the hypocrisy, but authenticity drives engagement. So for example, if you say you want employees to be transparent, but then humiliate them for admitting a mistake, that's hypocrisy. Versus if you want them to be transparent, they admit a mistake, you say, hey, yeah, you did mess up, but walk me through that. Let's talk about what happened and how we can prevent it. And you're able to collaborate on coaching, and then they correct it and don't make the mistake, and you recognize them for doing that. Then you're living out your value. Then they're more engaged, and ultimately you're more successful as a company. And I will challenge you with this. It sounds easy to say when I'm sitting here on a podcast, but when you're on a job, emotions are high, things are moving fast, it can be easy to get out of this. So it does take intentionality. And it's much easier to yell at people than it is to recognize. It's much easier to not live up to your values than it is to really live them out. So it is challenging, but the challenge is really worth it. You know, and mission and core values also gives you a common good that you're committed to that gets everyone moving in the right direction. So if you think about like oxen plowing a field, you know, if they're side by side walking the same direction, they multiply the force of that plow. But if one of them decides to run to the left and the other one runs to the right, then they're going to either break the plow, one of them's going to break free, and you're not going to have them helping at all. And it becomes chaos. So that's where that mission and purpose lived out in the right way keeps everyone moving in the same direction. So, for example, if you're a snow company, keeping healthcare facilities clear to prevent injuries and allow life saving access when seconds count, you know, if that's part of your mission, that should make people feel good, and you should be really committing to that. So, another thing that drives engagement is my associates or fellow employees are committed to doing quality work. If people believe that the people beside them and above them and around them are committed to quality, it raises the standard for everybody. And as leaders, you need to set the tone on here. One thing that can really ruin this for you is if you have rules for others, but not rules for you. So if you are a culture where you say, hey, I need everybody to be in the office by this time and focusing on this and this, but you show up whenever and focus on whatever. Maybe you're BSing half the day, you're calling somebody else, but you're telling them that they need to be very committed to work. That's going to come off as hypocrisy, and people are not ultimately going to trust you. So as leaders, again, set the example. So for example, in snow removal, knowing the priority areas and being willing to help out. So, if you have a crew where nobody's above shoveling, that, hey, if the account manager comes out to check a site and the shoveling's behind or a certain area needs clear and they pick up the shovel out of the back of their truck and clear it, then and you're demonstrating by example that I'm committed to good work. So that tells everybody, the person in the loader, the person on the sidewalk equipment, the site manager, that nobody is above helping out and doing the work that needs to be done. So, definitely look for ways to help out. That's a very practical way. But if people believe you're committed to good work, they're going to go that extra mile. And this next one, the next one, the most controversial question in the Gallup Q12. I have a best friend at work. Some of y'all might be rolling your eyes thinking, what in the world? Like, what, we supposed to hold hands and sing kumbaya or something? Like, what is this survey that you're swearing on talking about? So this one does bring up questions, but the research behind it doesn't lie. It affects engagement. And why they use the term best friend is it doesn't mean this is your best friend in real life, someone that you hang out with, but it means more than just an acquaintance. So if you think about it this way, you get home from work and you get your shoes off, you get changed, maybe you get a shower, you eat, get some food, you're relaxed. And, a casual acquaintance calls you and says, hey, I need help moving, or I need help with something. My truck got stalled and I need you to pick me up. Are you likely to really jump for a casual acquaintance? Maybe if you're a really good person, you are. But if your best friend calls and says, hey, I need help, you're likely to show up for your best friend. So it's talking about building those relationships in a way that people show up for each other. So, this is something you can't force, but you do need to allow for it to naturally occur. So a couple ways you can do this is create atmospheres and events and times for employees to gather. So one person I'll shout out on this, Mike McCarron from DC. So he actually, I know his company he's talked about it at SIMA and different places. They have monthly cookouts where they, put some food on, get together, just employees get to know each other, catch up, see what's going on. And that gives time for those friendships to build, that best friend bond, so to speak, that keeps people engaged to build. So give time for that bonding connection. It can be mid-season meetups. It can be maybe one day for morning huddle. You take, instead of, having the 5-minute huddle and heading out, maybe you say, I'm going to bring coffee and donuts or coffee and bagels and some protein. And we're going to have, 30 minutes of just powwow, getting to know each other once a month. So find those opportunities. They don't have to be all the time, but you do want to find those opportunities, and then even opportunities to work together and collaborate. Give those opportunities to employees, because in addition to unlocking both their strengths, it really helps build that friendship and connection. So, next steps with employee engagement, I suggest, in addition to learning about it, that everybody measure it and then create some kind of playbook where you can follow up on the measurement. So, if you're strong in an area, how do you keep building on it? If you're not strong, how do you get stronger? And if this is something that your head spinning or sounds interesting, but you're not sure where to start, reach out to me. I can help, because what this will do is get feedback for you. And feedback's like playing a game with a cheat code. I can help you play that game with a cheat code. So this has been Evan Tashwire on Net Gain. So if you like what you hear, make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to Net Gain. Leave us a review with comments. And if you feel like this can help someone in the business, whether it's your company or somebody else in the industry, share it with them. And then if you need help with hiring, training, or retaining your best people, reach out to us. Let's talk. This has been Evan Tashwire, Net Gain. I'm out.
With the weather, but you ain't gon' slip and fall with that. Why? Cause we snow fighters, we assaulting that. Get it, salting that. King need this soul.